This week on The Watchman, it's the story of Israel's greatest generation. You'll hear firsthand about the struggle to re-establish the state of Israel from one of the heroes who fought on the front lines 70 years ago.
We defended ourselves and we didn't allow them to attack. We were good defenders. We trained to hit the target. We didn't shoot in the air. Every shot was supposed to hit the target.
Plus, meet the courageous Israeli soldier who survived a horrific battlefield injury and is now inspiring the world. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchmen. They were modern Israel's greatest generation, the brave men and women who fought against overwhelming odds, both militarily and diplomatically, to reestablish the nation of Israel in 1948. The courageous soldiers of the Israeli Haganah, which was the precursor to the Israel Defense Forces of today, were severely outmanned and outgunned. From British occupiers to invading Arab armies, there were obstacles everywhere. A thriving, healthy Jewish state seemed impossible. Yet 70 years later, that's exactly what we have. And today, we're joined by one of the heroes who laid his life on the line to help make it happen. Baruch Tirosh is a veteran of the Palmach, the elite fighting force of the Haganah. He fought in Israel's war for independence and carried out daring covert missions to bring Holocaust survivors to Israel. He's an amazing man, and he sat down with us recently at the Palmach Museum in Tel Aviv to share his story. Take a look. You were 17 years old and you joined this elite fighting force, the Palmach.
Yes.
Set the stage for us. Take us back to the 1940s and the beginnings of your service.
The Haganah was the organization for the safety or security of the Jewish community, and the Palmach was the mobilized unit of the Haganah. All other units of the Haganah, they were volunteers, but they were not mobilized. The Palmach was mobilized, and there were about 4,600 members of the Palmach, and they were mobilized at all time. And actually, they were ready for any order of our leadership.
So ready to fight.
Our leadership had a striking force. The Palmach, the meaning of the words Palmach is striking force. This was...
Yeah, and you were 17.
I was even less than, I claimed to be 17. Not only that, later on, when I was in bigger operations, I cheated and I added 2 years to my age.
You were a proud Jew and a proud Israeli, and you wanted to defend your people and your country.
Yes.
Tell us what was happening around that time frame here in the land in 1945, right after, obviously, the Holocaust.
From security or safety-wise problems, situation was calm because the Arabs at that time were in a shock. They understood that the Jews have about 33,000 soldiers with the British Army, and they were afraid of them. And they knew that there was a Palmach also, they knew.
And this followed, Baruch, during the 1920s and 30s, Arab attacks on the Jewish residents of Jerusalem, Hebron, and other places here in Israel, pogroms against the Jews by the Arabs.
Yes, at that time, since the early 20s, they started with their attacks, as you mentioned, Hebron, Jerusalem, Jaffa, and the Tzfat. They killed hundreds and actually thousands of Jews. And at that time I was a little boy, but later on, when I was already in the Haganah, we defended ourselves and we didn't allow them to attack. I mean, we were good defenders. And as I told you, we were trained, I trained personally, we trained to hit the target. We didn't shoot in the air. Every shot was supposed to hit the target.
Precise. So, Baruch, by 1945, things had calmed down a bit here in the land. There was the British mandate.
Yes.
The British were occupying the land of Israel at that time, so people remember at home. But fast forward to 1947. The UN partition plan, they declared that Israel can have a nation in the land, and then things start to get ugly. The Arabs do not react well. Take it from there.
Yes, our leadership was happy, and our people was happy with the decision, the partition decision, because we said it's very good if we have a small independent country, we can bring in the 100,000 Holocaust survivors. And this was a problem because the British authorities didn't allow them to come in the country. And at that time, all we did was to organize against the embargo that was put on us by the British. So this was our main operation. And we had a certain person who was called Benny Marshak, and he said, "You're crazy." He said, "The real war will be with the Arabs, not with the British." What we didn't know at that time, we didn't know all our problems were with the British.
You were resisting the British occupation, and as you said, Baruch, they were not very kind to the Jewish people, to say the least, were the Brits. But in 1947, when the UN announces, yes, Israel can have a state, they can divide the land with the Arabs, that's when things got very interesting, and the Arabs started attacking and take it from there. And then you really went into action defending the Jewish people with the Palmach.
So at that time, the Arabs started to attack us. Our people, or the leadership and the people, we were very happy with this, but the Arabs were against, and they started to attack us. And unfortunately, our leadership at that time decided that all we have to do is to defend ourselves. So every Jewish community was defended by trenches and by barbed wire, and our people were defending ourselves. And this was very bad because the Arabs had much more military men, and they had a lot of equipment we didn't have.
So you weren't going on the offensive, you were playing defense. And meanwhile, Jerusalem was under siege, the Jews living in Jerusalem.
So this is what I wanted to tell you, that at that time we were only defending ourselves. But as I told you, at the beginning or by mid-March 48, we lost about 500 of our best people. They were killed. And then our leadership understood that this is not good, and they allowed us to go out and to attack the attackers. And this is what we did. At the beginning, the problem was the battle of the roads. The Arabs were stronger than us on the roads. They were blocking the roads, killing whoever was traveling, bombing cars, etc. So we started to fight back on the roads. And then the first big operation was called Operation Nachshon. This was an operation to free the road from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because in Jerusalem there were 100,000 Jews under siege. We had to liberate the road from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and to send convoys of trucks that today you cannot understand how we managed to do it, because the trucks were bombed by mines and everything. We sent about 220 boys and girls to this operation. Out of them, 110 were killed in the operation. We didn't win all the battles, but most of the battles we won, one battle after the other, and the war turned I mean, the situation turned to our side.
Up next, more from the Palmach Museum in Tel Aviv as Baruch Tirosh shares what it was like to fight on the fierce battlefields of Israel's war for independence 70 years ago. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around.
Last year, 5,000 Christians attended the CUFI Washington, D.C. Summit. The 2017 summit was our most power-packed gathering in history. Top leaders and foreign policy experts from Israel and America agreed on two things. Our two countries are stronger together, and Christians United for Israel plays a major role in keeping that relationship strong.
Through Christians United for Israel, more than 3.3 million believers raised their voices, have not been silent in support of Israel. And you can be heard in every city and town across America and in every office on Capitol Hill. And rest assured, the man down the street at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue hears you too.
That was 2017. Now, get ready for bigger, better things at the 2018 summit as CUFI celebrates Israel at 70. Make sure the world hears your voice. Where will you be in July 2018? Register now.
Can you tell us about the fellow men and women who were fighting alongside you and how the Israeli military at the time was very undermanned and under-equipped, and
we didn't have equipment. I'll tell you that the operation, the Nachshon operation to free the road to Jerusalem, we sent our leadership sent 1,500 Palmach members, and they had only 900 rifles. So they didn't have rifles for all of them. And later on, if I'll continue later on, I was suddenly sent abroad to bring Holocaust survivors, and also to bring arms. And I personally, with another friend of mine, we were on a ship. The ship was called Maesterale, and we brought 10,000 rifles, 2,500 light machine guns, and 500 heavy machine guns, and 500 millions of cartridge, you call it, yes. And this changed the situation.
so you brought arms back and things started to turn around, but you were still very much outnumbered by the Arab armies who were fighting against you. Set the scene a little bit, if you can, Baruch, about who you were fighting against. You personally fought against the Iraqi army, who invaded Israel.
Yes, the Iraqi army, they installed themselves in what in Arabic it is called Wadi Ara. Wadi Ara, it's a road that goes from Hadera to Afula in the valley of Jezreel. I participated in 4 battles there, that's all. And then I was sent abroad. Suddenly they took me out and I was sent to France. And I worked there at the camps of the survivors.
Of Holocaust survivors.
Holocaust, yes.
Wow, who, by the way, Baruch, some of the people fighting, I'm sure, in the Palmach and the Haganah were Holocaust survivors who came off a boat from Europe, were handed a rifle, and told you on the battlefield.
I was going to tell you, if you talk to somebody in Israel about the Palmach, anybody you talk to them, they'll tell you the Palmach was Sabras. You know what Sabras, the Israeli-born youngsters? And this is not true. As I told you, in the Palmach towards the War of Independence, there were mobilized 4,600 people. Out of them, 2,000 were Holocaust survivors.
2,000, almost half.
So almost half of the Palmach were, and out of these people, you know, finally, this way or another, about 100,000 survivors came to Israel. And in 10 years, out of those 100,000 people came out 10 military generals.
May 1948, David Ben-Gurion, right here in Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion declares Israel's independence 70 years ago. Israel goes on, the Jewish people go on to win the war for independence against overwhelming odds. You played a central part in this, Baruch, as a member of the Palmach, the elite fighting force. And Baruch, you went on to have a family, children, build a life here in Israel, and you've seen this nation be built from the ground up, from the very beginning you've been here. Tell us how it feels to see Israel turn 70 this year.
It was a miracle. We did our best, and we overcame at that time. Yeah. But believe me, that we didn't see the great things at that time. It was all simple, and we were very simple. We didn't know that the situation was so bad. It's unbelievable that we managed to have such a big army like we have. For instance, the Israeli Air Force is fantastic. Israel Navy is very good now. And the army is fantastic. In my opinion, the situation is very good. In my opinion, I'm very optimistic.
We thank you so much for your great service to Israel, and we thank you for joining us today. Thanks, Baruch. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Baruch Tirosh, a true hero, a gentleman, and one of Israel's greatest generation. It was an honor to spend time with him and to film at the Palmach Museum in Tel Aviv. It is a special place, and it really brings you back to the exciting and challenging time of Israel's founding. Be sure to pay them a visit the next time you are in Israel, hopefully soon. Well, coming up after the break, we go from one legendary Israeli warrior to another. Hear the inspiring story of an Israeli soldier who conquered unbelievable odds to defend his country with only one arm. Folks, you will not want to miss this one. Trust me. Don't move.
Wars, terrorism, boycotts, international condemnation, anti-Semitic lies. None of these things have been able to destroy the hope, generosity, courage, and ingenuity of the Jewish state. Israeli scientists and inventors are on the cutting edge of exciting breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and agriculture. For 70 years, Israel has faced overwhelming odds and miraculously triumphed. The Jewish people have not only survived, they have thrived. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. And the world needs to know the truth. This palm-sized snapshot of Israel at 70, Just the Facts, will help you share Israel's history and accomplishments with everyone you meet. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to CUFI.org/facts to receive your free gift. Israel is not a problem for the world to solve. Israel is solving the world's problems. Facts matter, so help CUFI share the truth about Israel at 70.
And welcome back. He's the only soldier in the world to lose an arm in combat and return to the battlefield. In his new book, Disarmed, Unconventional Lessons from the World's Only One-Armed Special Forces Sharpshooter, Izzy Ezagui shares his incredible story, and it's inspiring people in Israel and around the world. Take a look.
I wasn't born into like an Orthodox family, an Orthodox Jewish family. That happened when I was about 8 years old. My parents sat me down and they're like, hey buddy, this is happening now. And I was switched to a religious school, and that was really the first time that we started to learn the Bible, the Torah. And I discovered the Israelites and how they suffered in Egypt, what they went through as a people. And it bothered me. And the main catalyst was my father decided to take my family to Israel for my bar mitzvah. And we spent 3 weeks traveling the country. It really was an amazing trip. But on one of the very last days, we decided to drop off our laundry at a laundromat that's on a very busy intersection. 30 or 40 minutes after we left that intersection, a terrorist walked into a Sabaro's pizzeria that's on the same corner that we had just passed. And he had a guitar case that was loaded with explosives. And when he set it off, about 130 people were injured, 15 were killed, among them 7 women and children and a newborn child. And watching footage of this loop on the news was the first time that it dawned on me that all of these things that I had told myself when I was younger, that my people are okay, that it's ancient history. I had been lying to myself. I'd been wrong. Then I turned 18 and I became eligible for Birthright, which is a free 10-day trip for young Jews around the world. And I signed up just assuming that I'd have a good time, meet some girls, free hotel rooms and food and the bus and the flight, so it was gonna be a great time. And what ended up happening is I fell in love with the soldiers. I just had the urge after a couple minutes to pull out my phone, and I dialed my father back in the US, and I told him I'm joining the IDF. I had tears, rolling freely down my cheeks, and I didn't realize until years later when I was piecing my own story together that when I made that phone call, I had just crossed the intersection of King George and Yaffo, where the attack had happened 5 years earlier. So that's really what pushed me to serve. By the time the 9.5 months of training had ended, I felt ready for whatever would come my way. I got a phone call from my commander, and even before I picked up, I knew that something had to be wrong because I saw on the caller ID that it was him and it was the Sabbath. He wouldn't be calling if something hadn't happened. And when I answered, he told me that war had broken out on the Gaza border. This was Operation Cast Lead at the end of the year 2008. And he was calling to let me know that our unit was being sent right to the border. The unit spent about 2.5 weeks patrolling that border before we got our first piece of bad news. A captain from our brigade had been hit by a few RPGs, and he lost his life, unfortunately. We got back to base early that morning to find out what had happened. We were told that we were going in for the first time so that we could replace his position, that we could retrieve his body, reinforce his unit. And it was while we were preparing on base that a mortar landed about 1/2 foot away from me. A mortar is a very large military-grade munition. It has a very large blast radius, so if it landed, unfortunately, in the center of a room like this, the entire room would be destroyed. And it landed about 1/2 foot away from me, so having lost my left arm was a breeze, I guess I can say, compared to what could have been. The decision to go back was not a long evolution. It's something that happened right away. I woke up knowing that I wanted to go back. There were a lot of trials along the way. I had to overcome the medication, which was very hard to stop taking because of the severe phantom pain that I still feel currently. I still feel it now. And the doctors were begging me to take it, were telling me that I was crazy to stop. But I understood that a combat soldier is allowed to suffer through pain. Every combat soldier suffers. I still serve. I'm in the Special Forces. I promise you I suffer every year. We all do. But he can't be dependent on medication. So the only way I was going to go back is to stop taking it and to suffer. Now I knew that it wasn't only about me anymore. That if I succeeded, that it would inspire the soldiers around me. That they would see how much it mattered to not only to someone who was wounded, but to somebody who wasn't born there, who didn't have that official obligation. I think it's an obligation regardless. I was very excited at the opportunity to speak for CUFI on campus. CUFI in general, but campus specifically. When students from CUFI stand up for Israel on their campus, they see these students again and again. They have to pass them in the halls, they see them in classrooms. The fight continues for them. And the fact that they choose out of their own volition to do this, to me, is inspiring.
What an amazing story. Folks, be sure to pick up Izzy's great new book, Disarmed: Unconventional Lessons from the World's Only One-Armed Special Forces Sharpshooter. It will inspire you. Well, up next, my final thoughts on Israel turning 70 and the heroes that helped make it happen. It's The Watchman, it's CUFI, only right here on TBN. If you love experiencing Israel through The Watchman, I want to invite you to experience it with me in person on November 5th through the 15th. I'll be here in Israel with Pastor John Hagee, founder of Christians United for Israel, and together we will introduce you to the incredible people and places you've seen right here on the show every week. Folks, you don't want to miss this incredible opportunity to see and experience Bible history and the prophetic miracle of modern Israel firsthand. This year is the 70th anniversary of Israel's rebirth as a nation, and I want you to join our CUFI team here as we celebrate this amazing milestone in God's plan. I'll be here to share with you some of my favorite places and stories in the land where Jesus walked. Visit the CUFI website at the link below or call the number on your screen to join me and Pastor John Hagee here in Israel this November. And welcome back. Folks, what an honor to interview genuine heroes like Baruch Tirosh and Izzy Ezagui. It's humbling to spend time with men who've risked everything to help preserve and defend the world's one and only Jewish state, the State of Israel. When Israel was reborn in 1948, some said it wouldn't last but a few years, if that. Its enemies immediately invaded and vowed to wipe this new and tiny nation off the map. Yet Israel not only survived, it thrived and is blessing the world today in so many ways. Our team at Christians United for Israel knows that this is no coincidence. The book of Zechariah says that God stands against the nations that attack Israel, and that he who touches Israel touches the apple of God's eye. Folks, you heard Baruch's story. Israel's reestablishment as a nation wasn't only improbable, it was a miracle. And God is only getting started. You see the website and the phone number there on your screen, so join our movement here at CUFI and be part of what God is doing in His land today. Well, thanks for joining us this week here on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.